Picture this. You are standing in the middle of a vast open field thousands of years ago, wrapped in the absolute heavy velvet blanket of a moonless night. There are no glowing screens in your hand, no ticking hands on a wall, no distant mechanical hum of a modern city to anchor you to the present moment. By day, the blazing sun gave you a comforting illusion of mastery, dictating your labor and your rest with its brilliant, predictable arc across the sky. But now, in the enveloping darkness, that illusion quietly shatters. You are completely untethered, drifting in an endless, silent ocean of shadows where a single hour could feel like a fleeting minute, or a minute could stretch painfully into a lifetime. To survive this profound psychological void, early humans did not just wait in fear. They looked up into the infinite black, and eventually they looked within the rhythmic flow of nature itself, mastering the earliest, quietest forms of ancient timekeeping. But how exactly do you capture something as invisible, as relentless, and as deeply mysterious as the passage of time itself, when all you have around you is the profound stillness of the dark? Before we dive deeper into these forgotten stories of stillness and the slow flow of history, if you enjoy winding down and learning about the hidden rhythms of the past, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more relaxing content like this. And please, comment below to let me know where you are listening from tonight. I find it beautifully incredible that we are exploring these ancient stories together from different parts of the world. I connected across time and space by our shared journey into quietness and rest. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the weight of that ancient night. Imagine the air, cool and still, settling against your skin. In the ancient world, the setting of the sun did not just mean the end of the working day. It meant a complete and total surrender to the unknown. When the golden hues of twilight faded into the deep, bruised purple of dusk, and finally into the ink-black canvas of the night, the world changed its shape. The familiar landmarks, the distant mountains, the curves of the river, the edges of the forest, all dissolved into a singular vast emptiness. Without the sun to cast its reassuring shadows, time itself seemed to stop. It pooled around the ancient people, thick and motionless. For the shepherds guarding their flocks on the cold hillsides of Mesopotamia, or the priests maintaining the sacred flickering fires in the temples of early Egypt, the night was not merely a time for sleep. It was a vast expanse that needed to be navigated, a silent ocean that required a compass. If you wake in the middle of the night today, you simply glance at a device, and immediately you are grounded. You know exactly where you are in the river of time. You know how many hours remain before the dawn. But for our ancestors, waking in the absolute dark brought a profound sense of disorientation. Was the night only just beginning? Was the dawn about to break? Had they been asleep for a few moments or for many long, silent hours? The human mind, in its endless search for order and comfort, cannot tolerate the void. It craves rhythm. It craves a heartbeat. And so, the first attempts to measure the unseen passage of time were born not out of a desire for mechanical efficiency, but out of a deep psychological need for reassurance in the dark. The earliest, most majestic clock available to humanity was, of course, the night sky itself. Imagine lying on your back on the cool, dry earth, looking upward. The sky was not obscured by the artificial glow of city lights. It was a breathtaking, overwhelming dome of crushed diamonds scattered across a canvas of absolute black. If you watched closely enough and long enough, you would begin to notice that the stillness was an illusion. The sky was moving. It was turning, incredibly slowly, with a majestic, silent grace. The constellations, those mythical figures drawn by human imagination across the stars, were making their grand nightly procession across the heavens. Ancient astronomers, sitting in the quiet chill of the night, became the first watchers of time. They learned to identify specific stars that rose above the eastern horizon at certain points in the year. The Egyptians, for instance, meticulously tracked the rising of Sirius, the dog star, a bright, steady beacon in the dark. They divided the night sky into 36 groups of stars, which they called deacons. As the Earth turned, these deacons would rise one by one. By patiently waiting and watching in the absolute quiet, an Egyptian priest could look up, identify which deacon had just crossed the horizon, and know precisely which hour of the night it was. But this celestial clock, as beautiful and poetic as it was, had its limitations. It required a clear sky. It required an unobstructed view of the horizon. What happened when the heavy, gray clouds of winter rolled in, blanketing the stars and plunging the world into total, unreadable darkness? What happened when the rain fell? A steady, rhythmic drumming against the earth, hiding the slow turn of the constellations? The stars were silent, majestic timekeepers, but they were also distant and aloof. They could not be brought inside the temple. They could not be carried into the inner chambers of a palace. During the day, the sun provided a more tangible measure. The ancient people drove sticks into the soft earth and watched the shadows stretch, shrink, and stretch again. The sundial was a brilliant invention, capturing the light and turning it into a creeping finger that pointed to the passing hours. It was a silent companion throughout the day, a constant reassurance that time was moving forward, carrying them steadily toward the evening. But a sundial is merely a creature of the light. The moment the sun dips below the horizon, the sundial dies. It becomes nothing more than a lifeless piece of stone or wood, entirely useless in the very environment where humanity felt the most lost. The ancients realized a profound truth. Time does not stop when the sun goes down. Time does not pause when the clouds obscure the stars. Time is continuous. It is a relentless, unseen force that moves forward whether we can see it or not. It is like a river, forever flowing in one direction, carrying everything along with its current. And if time is like a flowing river, they reasoned, perhaps the only way to truly measure it, to capture its essence in the dark, is to find something else that flows. They needed a surrogate for time. They needed a physical substance that could mimic the invisible passing of moments. They needed something that could move with a steady, predictable rhythm, completely independent of the sun, the stars, or the weather. They needed to bring the concept of time down from the distant, silent heavens and place it right in front of them, where they could see it, hear it, and feel it. Imagine the quiet realization dawning in the mind of an ancient thinker. The sound of a slow, steady drip of water falling from a wet leaf in the aftermath of a storm. Plop, a pause. Plop, another pause. It is a sound that is incredibly simple, incredibly mundane, yet profoundly rhythmic. In that simple, unrepetitive sound lay the secret to conquering the darkness. If they could harness that flow, if they could control the drip, they could give time a voice. They could give time a physical body. This was the quiet, subtle shift that changed the course of human history. It was the movement away from observing the massive, sweeping cycles of the cosmos toward creating small, intimate, enclosed environments where the flow of time could be contained and measured. It was a movement from the grand to the granular. From the silent turn of the galaxy to the gentle, rhythmic drip of water in a dark room. As the night wore on and the stars continued their slow, silent march across the sky, the desire to capture this continuous flow grew stronger. The ancient people were on the verge of bringing time indoors, of domesticating the eternal rhythm of the universe. They were about to create devices that would murmur softly in the quiet hours, providing a steady, comforting heartbeat in the dead of night. Devices that would not just measure time, but would sing a slow, relaxing lullaby of passing moments. As the night deepens, and the stars continue their unimaginably slow procession across the great dark dome of the sky, let us gently shift our focus from the vastness of the heavens down to the quiet, intimate surface of the earth. We have seen how the ancient sky provided a majestic, though distant, clock. We have felt the cold, hard stone of the sundial losing its purpose as the shadows lengthened and finally dissolved into the twilight. But the human desire for order, the deep-seated need to understand the rhythm of existence, I could not simply go to sleep when the sun went down. The history of measuring time is not just a history of daylight and shadows. It is fundamentally a story of conquering the darkness, of finding a gentle, reassuring pulse in the dead of night. To truly understand how ancient people told time when the celestial bodies were hidden from view, we must look at how they interacted with the natural elements around them. The ancient world was a world defined by its raw materials: earth, air, fire, and water. Earth was solid, unyielding, and permanent. Air was invisible, erratic, and impossible to grasp. Fire was alive, consuming, and unpredictable, flaring up brilliantly before dying away into fragile gray ash. None of these could accurately represent the steady, continuous, and unrelenting nature of time. But water was different. Water is the lifeblood of the natural world. It possesses a unique, mesmerizing quality. It is heavy, yet it yields perfectly to its surroundings. It is smooth, cool, and above all, it flows. It obeys the silent, invisible pull of gravity with an absolute, unwavering devotion. Whether it is a mighty river carving a canyon through solid rock over millennia, or a tiny, fragile teardrop of moisture sliding down the waxy surface of a leaf, water moves. It moves continuously. It moves predictably. And most importantly for our ancestors waiting in the dark, it moves even when the sun is gone. Imagine for a moment an early thinker, a quiet observer of the ancient world, sitting alone by the edge of a slow-moving stream in the deep, quiet hours of the night. The moon is hidden behind a thick blanket of gray clouds. The world is plunged into absolute formless blackness. But even though the eyes are useless, the ears awaken to the subtle symphony of the environment. Listen closely to the imagined sound. The water is murmuring. It is a soft, continuous, rushing sound, flowing over smooth, rounded river stones. It never stops to catch its breath. It never hesitates. It simply flows, on and on, a liquid ribbon moving steadily toward an unseen sea. In that continuous, unbroken sound, the ancient observer found the perfect metaphor for time itself. Time is a river. It flows relentlessly forward. You cannot hold it in your hands, you cannot stop its current, but you can feel it passing by. The realization must have been as gentle and as profound as the dawn itself. If time is a flow, then the only way to measure it in the dark, the only way to give it a physical, tangible form, is to measure the flow of something else. Water was the answer. It was the physical embodiment of the passing moments. But a wild, untamed river is too vast, too chaotic to be used as a personal instrument. To measure time, the ancient people needed to capture a piece of that river. They needed to domesticate the flow, to bring a small, controlled portion of it into their silent temples, their quiet homes, and their dark observatories. They needed to create a vessel. Imagine a simple, humble pot made of fired clay, resting on a cool stone floor. The clay is rough to the touch, porous, and earthy. Now, imagine filling this pot with clear, cool water drawn from a deep, still well. The surface of the water inside the pot is perfectly smooth, acting like a dark mirror in the dim light. Now, I imagine a tiny, almost imperceptible hole pierced into the very bottom of this clay pot. Gravity, the invisible, tireless force of the earth, immediately begins its work. It reaches into the pot and gently, steadily pulls the water down. A single drop gathers at the edge of the hole. It swells, it trembles for a fraction of a second, and then it falls. Plop. It lands in a second, empty bowl placed directly underneath. Listen to that sound in your mind. Plop. A moment of silence. Plop. Another moment of silence. Plop. This is the sound of the birth of mechanical time. It is the sound of an invisible, abstract concept being translated into a physical, auditory reality. Each drop is a fraction of a second, a tiny grain of history falling from the future, passing briefly through the present, and collecting in the pool of the past. It is an incredibly soothing, rhythmic sound. In the absolute, terrifying silence of a moonless ancient night, the steady drip of water from a clay pot would have been an immensely comforting companion. It was a heartbeat for a sleeping world. The history of measuring time took a monumental leap forward with this simple, beautiful realization. No longer were humans entirely dependent on the clear skies or the bright sun. They had created their own personal rhythm. They could sit in a windowless room, wrapped in darkness, and listen to the passage of the hours. As the water level in the upper pot slowly, inexorably lowered, they could look at marks carved into the wet clay inside, feeling the waterline with their fingertips, and know exactly how much of the night had vanished into the lower bowl. This early mechanism was not about the frantic, precise counting of minutes and seconds that we obsess over in our modern lives. The ancient people were not rushing to catch a train or panicking about a deadline. Their relationship with time was slower, more forgiving, and deeply tied to the natural world. The flow of the water clock was a meditation. It was a gentle reminder that the universe was still functioning, that the earth was still turning, and that eventually, no matter how long and dark the night seemed, the dawn would inevitably arrive. The steady, relaxing drip of the water clock became a sacred sound. It was the sound used by priests to time their midnight prayers, ensuring that their chants to the gods were perfectly aligned with the hidden rhythms of the cosmos. It was the sound that accompanied scholars in their quiet studies, the soft, liquid metronome that paced their thoughts as they inscribed ancient symbols onto dry papyrus or wet clay tablets. It was the heartbeat of the ancient night, a gentle, soothing lullaby that watched over the sleeping cities. As we drift further into the history of these magnificent, quiet machines, we will travel to the sun-baked sands of Egypt and the massive starlit ziggurats of Babylon, where this simple concept of dripping water was elevated into an art form. But for now, just let your mind rest on the image of that simple clay pot. Feel the coolness of the water. Listen to the steady, rhythmic falling of the drops. Let the slow, continuous flow wash away the stresses of your own day, carrying you gently down the eternal river of time, deeper and deeper into a state of quiet, peaceful rest. Let us travel together, carried gently on the slow, invisible current of history, back to a time of immense stone monuments and vast starlit deserts. Imagine leaving the modern world far behind, drifting over the deep, endless sands until you reach the fertile, winding green ribbon of the Nile River. It is nightfall in ancient Egypt, over 3,000 years ago. The brutal, blinding heat of the desert sun has finally surrendered to the cool, velvety embrace of the dark. The air is still, carrying the faint, sweet fragrance of blooming lotus flowers and the rich, earthy scent of the riverbanks. Picture yourself standing before the towering, awe-inspiring columns of the Temple of Karnak in Thebes. The massive pillars, carved with the faces of forgotten gods and ancient pharaohs, or stretch upward, losing themselves in the thick shadows above. The world outside the temple walls has gone to sleep. The farmers in their mud brick houses are resting. The artisans have laid down their tools. The entire kingdom has surrendered to the quiet void of the night. But inside the sacred sanctuary, deep within the labyrinth of heavy stone corridors, a soft, flickering golden light remains. The temple never truly sleeps. The priests of the temple have a profound, sacred duty. They are the guardians of cosmic order, the intermediaries between the mortal world and the divine. For them, the night is not a time of rest, but a time of meticulous observation and precise ritual. The gods demand offerings, chants, and prayers at specific, unyielding intervals throughout the dark hours. To miss a prescribed moment, to let a sacred hour slip by unnoticed in the blackness, would be to invite chaos into the universe. But how could they possibly know the exact hour when the sun god, Ra, was journeying through the hidden underworld, far from mortal eyes? To solve this, the Egyptians created some of the most beautiful and mesmerizing instruments in human history. They crafted ancient water clocks. Step closer, in your mind's eye, into the dim, torch-lit sanctuary. Resting on a solid block of dark granite is a vessel of extraordinary elegance. It is not made of rough clay, but of smooth, pale alabaster. This stone is a milky, translucent white, and in the trembling light of the sanctuary torches, the alabaster seems to possess a soft, internal glow, as if it is holding a fragment of the moon itself. This vessel is shaped like a deep, inverted cone, a wider at the flat top and gently tapering down to a narrow base. If you were to gently run your fingertips along the inside of this cool stone bowl, you would feel a series of delicate, intentional marks carved into the alabaster. These are not mere decorations. They are the physical markers of passing time. They are arranged in 12 distinct columns, representing the 12 months of the Egyptian calendar, acknowledging that the length of the night subtly breathes and shifts with the changing seasons. Now, listen carefully to the silence of the temple. Beneath the faint crackle of the torches, beneath the soft rustle of linen garments worn by the waiting priests, there is another sound. It is incredibly faint, but utterly constant. Drip. A pause. A long, heavy breath of silence. Drip. At the very bottom of the alabaster cone, there is a tiny, perfectly drilled aperture. The vessel is filled to the brim with clear, pure water drawn from the sacred lake. Slowly, meticulously, gravity pulls the water through that single tiny hole. The water falls into a hidden basin below, drop by drop by drop. As the water slowly drains from the upper vessel, the surface level inside the alabaster cone gently sinks. This falling water level acts as a silent, descending hand on the clock of the night. An attendant priest, moving with slow, practiced grace, steps forward. He peers over the rim of the glowing alabaster. He watches the calm, flat surface of the water align with one of the carved marks on the inside wall. He nods softly. An hour has passed. The time for the next ritual has arrived. He turns and walks quietly down the massive stone corridor, his footsteps echoing softly to awaken the chanters. The shape of this vessel, the tapering cone, is a masterstroke of ancient observation. The Egyptian minds realized a subtle truth about the physics of water long before the equations were ever written down. If the bowl were a straight, simple cylinder, the water would flow out much faster when the bowl was full and heavy, and it would slow down to a sluggish crawl as the vessel emptied and the water pressure dropped. The hours would be uneven, distorted by the changing weight of the water, but by sloping the sides inwards, by narrowing the vessel towards the bottom, they compensated for this loss of pressure. The dropping water level remained perfectly, smoothly constant. The hours remained equal. Imagine the profound peace of sitting in that stone room, untasked only with watching the water fall. The rhythmic dripping becomes a meditation. It aligns with the beating of your heart. It matches the slow, deep rhythm of your breathing. With every drop, a fraction of the night washes away, carrying you closer to the dawn. It is a machine, yes, but a machine of ultimate tranquility, translating the harsh, unseen passage of time into a gentle, continuous lullaby. But the Egyptians were not the only ones listening to the liquid heartbeat of the night. Let us drift further east, leaving the Nile behind, floating over the vast, arid expanse of the Arabian desert until we reach the land situated between two great, meandering rivers. Mesopotamia. Here, beneath skies so clear and dry that the stars seem close enough to touch, the Babylonians are also tracking the flow of eternity. The Babylonians were the master astronomers of the ancient world. Their priests stood atop the massive stepped pyramids known as ziggurats, gazing up at the celestial dome with an obsession that bordered on the divine. They mapped the wandering paths of the planets, the phases of the moon, and the subtle shifts of the constellations. To them, the sky was a giant tablet upon which the gods wrote the destiny of kings and empires. But to map the heavens accurately, to record the exact moment a specific star crested the horizon or a planet entered a new house, they needed a precise measure of time that did not rely on the very stars they were trying to track. They, too, turned to the patient, reliable flow of water. While the Egyptians favored the elegant, outflowing alabaster bowls, the Babylonians often used a different method. They used cylindrical vessels, but instead of just marking the water level as it fell, they sometimes weighed the water that flowed out, or they measured the water as it flowed into a receiving container. Imagine a tall, sturdy cylinder of fired earth or bronze, standing resolute on an observation deck high above the sleeping city of Babylon. A Babylonian astronomer sits quietly beside it, holding a clay tablet and a reed stylus. He is waiting for a celestial event, perhaps the rising of Venus. The water clock beside him is running, a steady, silent flow from one vessel to another. When the bright planet finally pierces the horizon, he immediately checks the clock. He measures the volume of water that has been collected in the lower basin. By knowing exactly how much water flows in a given period, he can translate that volume into a precise measurement of time. For these ancient scholars, the water clock was not just a tool for religious rituals. It was a scientific instrument, a vital companion in their quest to understand the architecture of the universe. In the dead of night, high upon the ziggurat, surrounded by nothing but the cool wind and the glittering canopy of space, the steady rhythmic movement of water was their anchor. It grounded them. It provided a mathematical certainty in a world that often felt governed by the unpredictable whims of gods. Whether it was the glowing alabaster cones in the deep sanctuaries of Karnak, or the sturdy bronze cylinders on the starlit ziggurats of Babylon, these ancient water clocks served the same profound psychological purpose. They tamed the terror of the dark. They took the vast, the overwhelming, and invisible concept of time and confined it within a vessel. They gave time a voice, a gentle, soothing voice that spoke in the language of falling drops. As you lie there, listening to the quiet of your own room, imagine the sheer comfort our ancestors must have felt in the presence of these slow, rhythmic machines. The night was no longer an empty, frightening void. It was a space filled with a steady, peaceful progression. The dripping water was a promise that the darkness was not permanent, a promise that the hours were moving forward, safely and continuously, carrying the sleeping world gently toward the warming light of a new day. Let that slow, ancient rhythm guide your own breathing now. Inhale the stillness of the temple. Exhale the worries of the day. Let the water flow, drop by drop, into the quiet basin of the night. Let us leave the vast, star-drenched deserts of Egypt and the towering brick ziggurats of Babylon behind us now. Imagine yourself stepping onto a heavy wooden ship. The night air is cool and carries the sharp, clean scent of salt. You are drifting slowly across the calm, dark mirror of the Mediterranean Sea. The rhythmic, gentle creaking of the wooden hull and the soft, repetitive lapping of the dark water against the sides of the ship rock you back and forth. It is a slow, hypnotic journey across the ancient world. You are traveling toward a land of olive groves, white marble, and deep philosophical thought. You are arriving on the quiet shores of ancient Greece. As you step off the ship and wander into the sleeping city of Athens, the environment changes. The grand and silent temples of the Egyptians are replaced by the sophisticated, geometric architecture of a society deeply obsessed with logic, fairness, and the mechanics of the natural world. The Greeks, with their restless and brilliant minds, inherited the silent, dripping vessels of the East. But they did not just leave them in the dark sanctuaries of the priests. They brought the flow of time out into the civic world, into the squares, and into the very heart of their society. It is here, in the quiet, shaded corners of Greek civilization, that we encounter a fascinating new word. As we gently unravel the threads of clepsydra history, we discover a name that is both deeply poetic and slightly mysterious. They called their water clocks the clepsydra. If you whisper that word to yourself, clepsydra, it almost sounds like the gentle splashing of water against stone. But its meaning is far more intriguing. In the ancient Greek tongue, clepsydra translates beautifully to water thief. Why would they call such a serene, peaceful instrument a thief? Imagine watching a clepsydra in the dim light of dawn. The water in the upper vessel seems perfectly still, perfectly complete. Yet, silently, relentlessly, through a tiny, hidden aperture at the bottom, the water is escaping. It is being stolen away by gravity, drop by drop, stream by stream, slipping into the lower vessel. Just as time itself silently and invisibly steals away the moments of our lives, the clepsydra silently stole away the water. It was a visual, tangible metaphor for the fleeting nature of existence. But it was not a malicious theft. It was a natural, inevitable, and strangely comforting process. You cannot stop the water from flowing, just as you cannot stop the night from turning into day. You can only watch it, accept it, and find peace in its steady rhythm. Let us walk into one of the great civic spaces of ancient Athens. It is not a temple this time, but a dicasterion, a court of law. Imagine entering a large open-air stone enclosure. The morning sun is just beginning to cast long, soft shadows across the smooth marble benches, but the atmosphere is already thick with a heavy, serious quiet. Hundreds of citizens are gathered, taking their seats to listen to arguments, to weigh evidence, and to deliver justice. In a world without digital timers or ticking clocks, how do you ensure that every man, regardless of his wealth or status, is given the exact same amount of time to speak? How do you measure fairness? You measure it with water. You measure it with the clepsydra. Picture a magnificent, heavy terracotta vessel resting on a low stone pedestal at the front of the court. It has been carefully shaped by a master potter, its sides swelling gracefully before narrowing down to a small spout near the base. Inside, the clay has been smoothed and perhaps coated with a thin layer of natural wax to ensure that the water glides effortlessly downwards without soaking into the porous earth. It is filled to the absolute brim with cool, clear water. When a speaker steps forward to begin his defense, an attendant, moving with quiet, deliberate precision, pulls a small bronze stopper from the spout of the upper vessel. Immediately, a smooth, unbroken, crystalline stream of water arcs out, falling with a gentle, continuous splashing sound into an identical terracotta vessel resting on the floor below. Listen to the sound of that court. The speaker's voice rises and falls, delivering impassioned arguments or logical deductions. But beneath every word he speaks, there is the steady, calming, rushing sound of the captive water. It is a miniature, indoor waterfall. It is the sound of justice flowing. The speaker knows he only has as much time as it takes for the upper vessel to empty. He cannot rush the water, and he cannot slow it down. He must pace his thoughts to match the rhythm of the falling stream. This creates a profoundly calming atmosphere, even in the midst of a heated debate. The water is an impartial judge. It does not care about the eloquence of the speaker, the wealth of the defendant, or the anger of the crowd. It only knows gravity. It only knows its steady downward journey. There is something deeply relaxing about surrendering control to such an inevitable, natural force. Imagine the sheer physical presence of time in that room. Time was not an abstract number on a screen. Time was a heavy volume of water. You could see time running out. You could hear time splashing into the basin below. You could, if you were close enough, feel the cool mist of time brushing against your skin. And then there is a fascinating detail about the Greek clepsydra that is wonderfully comforting to think about as you drift towards sleep. Sometimes, a trial would be interrupted. Perhaps a document needed to be read, or a witness needed to be called forward. In our modern lives, we pause our digital timers with the frantic tap of a finger, always anxious to resume. But in ancient Athens, the pause was physical, organic, and gentle. When an interruption occurred, the attendant would quietly step forward and simply place his finger, or a small stopper, over the bronze spout. The flow of water would instantly cease. The gentle splashing sound would vanish, replaced by a deep, resonant silence in the courtroom. Think about the profound psychological weight of that simple action. With the press of a thumb, time itself was suspended. The relentless forward march of the moments was put on hold. The water waited patiently in the dark belly of the terracotta jar. It did not agitate. It did not complain. It simply rested in a state of suspended animation, perfectly still, perfectly calm, waiting for the finger to be removed so it could resume its journey. Imagine having that power in your own life tonight. Imagine reaching out your hand and gently placing your finger over the spout of your worries, your stresses, and your racing thoughts. Imagine stopping the frantic flow of the day. You have the power to suspend the rush. The water will wait. The responsibilities of tomorrow will remain securely contained in their vessel until the morning light. For now, the flow has stopped. The room is quiet. When the interruption in the Athenian court was over, the attendant would remove the stopper and the sweet, murmuring sound of the water would return, picking up exactly where it left off, flowing smoothly and effortlessly downward. When the upper jar was finally empty, when the last few drops trickled out and fell with a final, quiet plop into the lower basin, the speaker's time was over. He would step down, regardless of whether he had finished his sentence. The water had spoken. The clepsydra was not just a tool for lawyers and politicians. The Greeks, ever resourceful, scaled this technology up and down. They built small, portable water clocks that scholars could keep in their studies to measure the hours of their night reading. And they built grand, monumental water clocks in the public squares, known as the Tower of the Winds, where complex internal mechanisms, driven entirely by a steady stream of water from the Acropolis, would slowly turn dials and ring bells to announce the passing hours to the entire city. But whether it was a small personal jar in a quiet, lamp-lit room, or a massive marble tower standing under the open sky, the core principle remained the same. It was the principle of continuous, gentle flow. It was the understanding that time is not a jagged mechanical thing, but a smooth liquid stream that washes over us all. As you lie resting now, let the image of the Athenian clepsydra fill your mind. Visualize the smooth, dark terracotta. Hear the soft, continuous splash of the water falling into the basin. Allow the steady, predictable rhythm of the water thief to steal away any remaining tension in your muscles. Let it wash away the loud, chaotic noises of the modern world. You are safe in the quiet, ancient court. The water is flowing gently. The air is cool. There is nothing to do but listen, breathe, and let the liquid time carry you deeper into the comforting, heavy embrace of sleep. Let us gently drift away from the marble columns and the quiet, sun-baked courtyards of the Mediterranean. Imagine closing your eyes and allowing the soft, invisible currents of history to carry you far, far away to the distant east. You are floating high above the ancient Silk Road, a long, winding ribbon of dusty trails crossing vast, silent mountains, sweeping valleys, and endless, starlit steps. The journey is incredibly slow, deeply peaceful, and entirely undisturbed by the frantic pace of the modern world. You are traveling toward magnificent empires, places of profound philosophy, intricate art, and monumental engineering. You are arriving first in the misty, quiet capital of Kaifeng, in the very heart of ancient China during the grand era of the Song Dynasty. Here, the history of measuring time takes a breathtaking, monumental turn. The simple, so quiet clay pots and alabaster bowls of the past have evolved into something unimaginably vast, yet they miraculously retain that same, deeply soothing rhythm of flowing water. Imagine standing in a tranquil, walled imperial courtyard just before the break of dawn. The air is cool and damp, carrying the faint, sweet scent of wet earth, aged pine wood, and blooming jasmine from a nearby garden. Rising before you in the dim, pre-dawn light is not a small, personal vessel, but a massive, towering structure standing nearly 40 feet tall against the dark sky. It is the great astronomical clock tower designed by the brilliant polymath and engineer Su Song. Do not let its immense size startle your restful state. This towering wooden giant does not roar, and it does not clatter with the aggressive noise of modern machinery. It breathes. It murmurs. It sings a slow, deep, and rhythmic lullaby of wet wood and falling water. Close your eyes again and listen closely to the sounds emanating from its grand wooden heart. Deep inside the dark belly of the tower, hidden entirely from view, is a massive water wheel. But it does not turn with the violent, chaotic rushing of a wild river. It turns with an agonizing, beautiful, and deliberate slowness. Listen to the intricate mechanism. A continuous, gentle stream of water flows from a large, hidden reservoir. The water falls with a soft, repetitive splashing sound into a small wooden bucket attached to the outer rim of the great wheel. You can hear the water filling the wood. It is a hollow, deeply satisfying sound. Shh, plop, plop, plop. As the small wooden bucket slowly fills to the brim, it becomes heavier and heavier. The weight of the captured water begins to pull downwards against the mechanism. And then there is a soft, deep, resonant creak of heavy oak. A subtle, metallic click as a giant brass escapement mechanism gently releases its tight hold. The giant wheel turns, but just for one single measured fraction of an inch. Creak, splash, click. Then comes a long, heavy, peaceful pause. You wait in the cool dark. Creak, splash, click. Another long, heavy, comforting pause. This is the rhythmic heartbeat of an empire. It is a slow, methodical, deeply relaxing cadence. With every subtle, groaning turn of that massive, wet wooden wheel, thousands of intricate gears in the levels above are set into incredibly slow, deliberate motion. On the very top of the tower, open to the vast night sky, a massive bronze armillary sphere, a complex physical model of the heavens, turns perfectly in sync with the actual stars above. As the water flows patiently below, the heavy bronze rings slowly, imperceptibly glide through the cool air, tracking the silent journey of the constellations. Scholars in soft silk robes stand quietly in the shadows, watching the slow turning of the spheres, entirely at peace with the heavy, magnificent flow of the universe. Let the slow, creaking rhythm of the Chinese clock tower fade gently into the background now, becoming nothing more than a soft, rhythmic hum at the very edge of your awareness. We are drifting once again, carried by the warm, fragrant winds of the desert, moving towards the vibrant golden age of the Islamic world. And the landscape beneath our imagined flight changes to rolling golden dunes and intricate geometric palaces. But the ancient quest to capture the gentle, continuous flow of time remains exactly the same. We arrive in a magnificent, shaded courtyard, bathed in the soft, deep blue light of the evening. The air is thick, warm, and heavy with the relaxing, earthy aroma of frankincense and myrrh. Resting in the exact center of this quiet, tiled space is an absolute marvel of imagination and ancient engineering. It is not a towering pagoda, but a magnificent, silent companion. It is the legendary elephant clock, designed by the master engineer and artisan, Ismail Al-Jazari. Imagine looking at this incredible creation resting on the smooth stone floor. It is a grand, sculptural masterpiece standing several feet tall. It is a beautifully crafted, life-sized mechanical model of a majestic Indian elephant, carrying an ornate, lavishly decorated palanquin on its strong back. At first glance, sitting in the twilight, it looks like a magnificent, oversized toy, a silent statue completely frozen in time. But inside the dark, hollow belly of the great elephant, the ancient, familiar magic of water is quietly, relentlessly at work. Deep within the beast, hidden from the eyes of the world, is a deep, perfectly still basin of cool water. Floating perfectly level upon the calm surface of this water is a heavy metal bowl. In the exact center of this bowl is a tiny, precisely calculated hole. Listen to the profound silence of the hollow elephant. It is deep, but it is not empty. It is a silence filled with patient anticipation. Through that tiny hole, the water from the deep basin is slowly, quietly seeping into the floating bowl. It is a microscopic flow, a delicate, entirely invisible seep. You cannot hear it, you cannot see it, but you know with absolute certainty that it is happening. The bowl is slowly, imperceptibly becoming heavier. Minute by minute, drop by invisible drop, it sinks lower and lower into the dark, enclosing water. The wait is deliciously long. It is an exercise in ultimate patience and surrender. You sit in the cool courtyard, watching the motionless elephant, knowing that deep inside, a tiny, inevitable, and peaceful change is constantly occurring. And then, after exactly half an hour of perfect, undisturbed stillness, the floating bowl finally fills completely. It becomes too heavy to float. It sinks with a soft, muffled plunge beneath the surface of the dark water. This gentle, sinking action pulls a hidden taut string, setting off a mesmerizing slow-motion ballet of mechanics on the back of the elephant. Look up at the palanquin. A small, beautifully carved wooden bird slowly rotates, spreading its painted wings. A tiny mechanism gently, smoothly releases a small, solid brass ball. Listen to the sound. The heavy brass ball rolls slowly down a carved wooden channel. It is a satisfying, continuous, low rumble. The ball drops gracefully into the open mouth of a sculpted metallic dragon. The dragon, suddenly weighted by the ball, slowly pivots downward, its intricately carved head descending with graceful, deliberate, and beautiful slowness. As the dragon's head lowers completely, the brass ball rolls gently out of its mouth and drops into a resonant brass vase sitting securely in the palanquin. The metal ball strikes the metal vase. Chime. It is a soft, deep, and beautifully resonant note. It is not harsh. It does not startle. It lingers perfectly in the quiet air of the courtyard, slowly and gently decaying into absolute silence. The single chime is not an alarm demanding your attention. It is a gentle whisper, a beautifully crafted announcement that another half hour of your life has peacefully drifted by. Following the chime, the dragon's head slowly, automatically rises back to its resting position. The submerged hollow bowl inside the elephant is mechanically pulled back to the surface, emptied of its water, and the slow, silent, microscopic process of filling begins all over again. These monumental water clocks of the East, whether turning massive, wet wooden wheels in the misty courtyards of China, or orchestrating the delicate, beautiful dance of a mechanical elephant in the fragrant palaces of the Middle East, share the exact same soul. They are testaments to human patience. They do not rush time. They do not try to squeeze more tasks into a single hour. They merely celebrate time's slow, continuous, and inevitable flow. As you lie there, safe and comfortable in the dark, let your own breathing match the incredibly slow filling of those hidden bowls. Let your heartbeat align with the gentle, rhythmic drop of the brass ball. Breathe in the cool night air. Let the heavy, peaceful stillness of these ancient, incredible machines weigh down your eyelids, relaxing your muscles, and pulling you closer and closer to a deep, undisturbed sleep. As we continue our slow, peaceful journey through the ancient world, let the warm, fragrant air of the eastern palaces gently fade from your mind. Imagine instead that the season is slowly, inevitably turning. You are safe and warm, deeply nestled under heavy, comforting layers of woven wool. But outside your imagined window, the world is preparing for a deep, long slumber. We are moving northward now, into the high mountains and the dense, quiet forests of antiquity, just as the very first breath of true winter arrives. Picture a night where the air itself seems to turn to crystal. The sky is completely clear, devoid of the soft, insulating blanket of clouds, allowing the heat of the earth to radiate out into the endless, freezing void of space. The stars above are no longer the warm, shimmering companions of the desert. They are hard, brilliant points of icy light, piercing the absolute blackness. Listen to the wind. It is no longer a gentle, fragrant breeze. It is a low, mournful, and sweeping moan that wraps around the stone walls of a high monastery or an isolated observatory, trying to find a way inside. Draw your imaginary blankets a little closer around your shoulders and feel the profound safety of your warm, quiet room. In the ancient world, winter was not simply a change in the weather. It was a profound slowing down of all existence. The sap retreated deep into the roots of the ancient oaks. The animals burrowed deep into the earth, surrendering to the heavy, irresistible pull of hibernation. The rivers, those massive, roaring ribbons of life, began to grow sluggish and thick at their edges, heavily burdened by the creeping cold. And what of our faithful, murmuring companion, the water clock? What happens to the history of measuring time when the temperature drops, and the very element we rely upon begins to change its nature? Imagine standing in a small, unheated stone room in the dead of this freezing night. In the center of the room, resting on a heavy oak table, is a beautiful, simple clepsydra. The water inside the upper vessel has been dutifully dripping, marking the hours for the sleeping monks or the solitary astronomer. But tonight, the air inside the room is bitterly, bitingly cold. You can see your own breath hanging in the air, a soft white mist that slowly dissipates into the shadows. Water, for all its beautiful, yielding, and flowing qualities, it is ultimately a creature of nature. It is profoundly sensitive to the environment. As the deep chill of the winter night seeps through the stone walls and embraces the terracotta or bronze vessel, the water inside begins to react. It loses its playful, easy grace. It becomes dense. It becomes sluggish. Listen closely to the sound of the falling drops now in your mind. Plop. It is a heavier sound than before, a thicker, more reluctant sound. The pause that follows is longer. The water is resisting the pull of gravity, clinging desperately to the edges of the tiny aperture. The flow of time itself is beginning to warp and stretch in the cold. Plop. Another heavy, delayed drop falls. If an ancient scholar were awake to measure this, they would find that the hours of the night were suddenly becoming unbearably, stretching long. The water clock, the ultimate arbiter of fairness and steady rhythm, was being distorted by the breath of winter. The cold was literally slowing down time. And then, as the night reaches its deepest, most freezing point, the ultimate silence falls. Imagine the ancient timekeeper waking from a brief rest, his heavy woolen robes wrapped tightly around him. He steps quietly across the freezing stone floor, expecting to hear the familiar, comforting rhythm that has guided him through countless nights. He expects to hear the heartbeat of the room. But as he approaches the table, he is met with an absolute, profound, and eerie stillness. There is no sound, there is no splash, there is no gentle murmur. He reaches out a trembling, cold hand and gently touches the surface of the water in the upper vessel. His fingertips do not meet the soft, yielding, wet surface of liquid. Instead, they meet something hard, smooth, and brutally unyielding. The water has frozen solid. A thick, clear sheet of ice has sealed the top of the vessel, and deep inside the tiny spout, the water has expanded and solidified, completely choking the delicate flow. Time has stopped. The relentless, invisible river of the night has been captured and frozen into a block of silent ice. The ancient timekeeper stands there in the dark, his breath pluming in the freezing air, looking at the paralyzed machine. There is no panic in his heart, only a quiet, heavy realization. The natural world has reclaimed its authority. The machine has failed, entirely defeated by the silent, creeping power of the frost. This beautiful, frustrating vulnerability was the great turning point in how ancient people told time. And the water clock was a brilliant, necessary step in human history, but it was deeply, fundamentally flawed. It was too alive. It was too responsive to the world around it. And it was not only the brutal, paralyzing cold of winter that betrayed them. Imagine the exact opposite extreme. Picture the blazing, unbearable heat of a high summer noon in the Mediterranean or the deep deserts of the East. The sun beats down with a fierce, punishing intensity, turning the stone buildings into massive, radiating ovens. Inside the dry, baking rooms, the clepsydra sits, filled with precious water. But under the immense heat, the water does not freeze. It vanishes. It evaporates. The dry, thirsty air acts like an invisible sponge, silently stealing the water from the upper bowl before it ever has a chance to flow through the spout. Why, as the moisture is pulled into the air, turning into an invisible vapor, the water level in the clock drops much faster than it should. The hours fly by with an unnatural, chaotic speed. The heat accelerates time, just as the cold had dragged it to a frozen halt. Whether trapped in the crystalline prison of winter ice or stolen away by the invisible fingers of the summer heat, water proved to be an imperfect guardian of eternity. It was a beautiful, relaxing companion in temperate weather, but it could not be trusted to hold the steady, unyielding rhythm of the universe in the face of nature's extremes. The ancient scholars, the priests, and the engineers did not despair. They simply sat in the quiet, frozen rooms or in the baking, dry courtyards, and they thought. They realized they needed to look away from the life-giving, untemperamental nature of water. They needed an element that was dead. They needed a material that was entirely indifferent to the turning of the seasons. Something that would not freeze when the world turned to ice and would not vanish when the world turned to fire. They needed something dry, something granular, something that belonged entirely to the earth itself. As you lie safely in your bed, listening to the imaginary howling of the winter wind outside the thick stone walls, let the image of the frozen water clock bring you a deep sense of peace. The struggle against the elements is paused. The frozen silence in that ancient room is a perfect, profound rest. There is no time to keep any more tonight. The dripping has ceased. The burden of tracking the hours is completely lifted from your shoulders. You let your own body mimic that heavy, peaceful stillness. Feel the warmth of your blankets contrasting with the imagined cold of the ancient world. Let your muscles become heavy and entirely relaxed, unbothered by the passing minutes. The ancient minds are quietly searching for a new solution, turning their thoughts toward the dry, golden sands of the earth. But that is a story for when the thaw finally comes. For now, in this deep, cold, and silent winter night, Time is perfectly, beautifully frozen. There's nothing to do but sleep. Let us slowly thaw from that frozen, silent stillness. Leave the bitter cold of the ancient winter night behind you now. Imagine stepping out of the freezing dark and into a profoundly warm, dimly lit, and deeply comforting space. You are entering the secret, quiet workshop of a medieval artisan. The air inside is thick and heavy, smelling faintly of wood smoke, melted beeswax, and warm earth. In the corner of the room, a small, contained furnace glows with a steady, hypnotic orange light. The heat radiates outward, gently wrapping around your cold shoulders, relaxing every tense muscle in your back and arms. It is a safe, creative haven, isolated entirely from the unpredictable, harsh weather of the outside world. It is within these warm, quiet walls that human ingenuity found its beautifully simple answer to the freezing water and the evaporating pools. The mysterious invention of the hourglass did not happen with a sudden, loud strike of inspiration. It evolved slowly, meticulously, born out of a deep need for a substance that was dead to the changing seasons. A material that was entirely dry, incredibly fine, and immune to the creeping frost. To create this perfect miniature desert, the artisan first needed a perfect vessel. Imagine watching a master glassblower sitting quietly by the glowing furnace. He holds a long, hollow iron pipe. At the end of the pipe is a small gathering of molten glass, glowing like a captured ember from the fire itself. He raises the cool iron pipe to his lips. He does not blow forcefully. He simply exhales. It is a long, slow, controlled, and deeply peaceful breath. As he breathes, the glowing ember of glass slowly expands. It forms a perfect, delicate, transparent sphere. With slow, practiced movements of his heavy tools, he gently pinches the middle of the glowing shape, forcing the glass to narrow, creating a tiny, perfectly proportioned waist. He is crafting two identical worlds, connected by a singular, microscopic bridge. It is an act of pure balance. When the glass finally cools, losing its fiery orange glow and settling into a clear, cool, silent transparency, the vessel is ready. But a glass vessel, no matter how beautifully blown, is useless without the perfect substance to flow within it. You might imagine that the artisan simply walked to a nearby riverbank or a windy beach and scooped up a handful of ordinary sand. But ordinary sand is flawed. It is coarse, it is jagged under a microscope. It clings to moisture in the air, clumping together and refusing to flow. It contains tiny fragments of broken shells and sea salt that would inevitably clog the delicate, narrow throat of the glass, stopping time just as surely as the winter ice. No, the material inside these early timepieces was rarely just sand. It was a carefully engineered masterpiece of medieval chemistry. The preparation of this material was a ritual of extreme patience, a slow, repetitive process that is incredibly soothing to witness. Imagine the artisan moving to a heavy wooden table. On the table sits a shallow copper pan. Into this pan, he does not pour sand, but something much finer. Perhaps it is pure white marble dust, scraped painstakingly from a sculptor's floor. Or perhaps it is a mound of crushed eggshells, baked in an oven until they are brittle, and then ground down with a heavy stone mortar and pestle. The sound of the grinding is a low, rhythmic crunching, a slow, satisfying destruction of form into absolute dust. To ensure that this fine powder will flow with absolute, fluid perfection inside the glass, it must be cleansed of every invisible impurity, every speck of natural oil or moisture that might cause it to stick. And so the artisan begins a strange, fragrant, and deeply relaxing recipe. He places the copper pan over a very low, gentle flame. Listen to the soft, comforting hiss of the fire. He takes a clay jug filled with dark, rich, aged red wine and pours a generous measure into the dust. The liquid hits the warm copper with a soft sizzle. Then, he takes heavy yellow lemons, slicing them open and squeezing the sharp, fragrant juice directly into the dark mixture. The smell of the warm wine and the bright, citrusy lemon fills the quiet workshop, creating an intoxicating, heavy perfume that settles deeply into your lungs as you breathe. The artisan takes a wooden spoon and begins to stir, slowly, methodically, round and round in the shallow copper pan, and the heat gently simmers the mixture. The acidic lemon juice and the alcohol of the wine work their invisible magic, breaking down any organic matter, stripping away the invisible greases and salts from the marble dust. Listen to the sound of the simmer. It is a thick, bubbling whisper. Plub, plub, plub. It is the sound of purification. He stirs this heavy, fragrant mud for hours, never rushing, never changing his slow, hypnotic pace. When the liquid has finally, completely evaporated into the warm air of the workshop, leaving behind a perfectly dry, stained crust in the copper pan, the heat is removed. But the process is far from over. This is where the true rhythm of the hourglass begins. The dried crust is carefully scraped out and gently crushed back into a fine powder. But it is still not fine enough. It must be perfect. It must flow like water. The artisan brings out a series of wooden sieves. These are not ordinary kitchen strainers. The mesh stretched across the wooden hoops is made of the finest, most delicate materials available, perhaps tightly woven silk threads or incredibly fine strands of beaten bronze. He pours a handful of the dried, treated dust into the first sieve. He holds it over a clean sheet of dark leather. And then, he begins to shake it. Listen to this sound. Let it fill your mind completely. It is a soft, dry, rushing whisper. Shh, 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 shh. It is the sound of thousands of tiny, perfect grains falling through the fine mesh, while the larger, imperfect pieces are left behind. The artisan discards the rough pieces. He takes the fine dust that has fallen onto the leather, gathers it up, and prepares to sift it again. According to the old, patient recipes, to create a truly flawless hourglass, the sand must be boiled in the wine and lemon, dried, and then sifted not once, not twice, but 9 separate times. Imagine watching this incredibly slow, repetitive, and peaceful labor. He pours the dust into a finer sieve. Shh, shh. That is the second time. The dust is becoming softer, lighter. He gathers it again. He pours it into an even finer silk mesh. Shh, shh. That is the third time. The sound is becoming quieter, more like a gentle breeze rustling dry autumn leaves. You sit in the warmth of the glowing workshop, your eyes heavy, your breathing matching the slow, rhythmic swaying of his arms. The fourth time. Shh, shh. The fifth time. Shh, shh. The sixth time. The dust is now so fine it looks like smoke, like a dry, flowing liquid. And the seventh time. Shh, shh. The eighth time. Shh, shh. And finally, the ninth sifting. He uses a sieve so exquisitely tight that it seems solid to the eye. He shakes it gently. The powder that falls onto the dark leather is an absolute marvel. It is a miracle of human patience. It is pure, perfect, identical grains of eternity. The artisan carefully gathers this precious, silent material. He takes the beautiful, hollow glass vessel he blew earlier. With a small parchment funnel, he slowly pours the perfect, 9 times sifted dust into one of the glass bulbs. It does not clump, it does not stick. It flows through the funnel with a smooth, continuous, deeply satisfying hush. Once the precise amount of dust is inside, he must seal the vessel forever. Early hourglasses were often made of 2 separate glass bulbs joined at the neck. The artisan carefully aligns the 2 halves. He wraps the delicate waist in a tight binding of strong cord. Over the cord, he presses warm, soft beeswax, sealing the joint completely from the humid air of the outside world. To protect the fragile glass, he places it within a sturdy frame of carved oak with solid wooden end caps and thick wooden pillars. The instrument is complete. It is a closed, perfect, independent universe. The artisan holds the heavy wooden frame in his strong, quiet hands. He pauses for a moment in the dim light of the workshop, and then, with a smooth, graceful motion, he turns the glass over. Listen. It is not the heavy plop of a water drop. It is a completely new sound in the history of the world. It is the sound of the first hourglass. It is a continuous, dry, silken hiss. It is the sound of a million tiny, perfectly identical spheres rubbing gently against the smooth glass walls, funneling perfectly, flawlessly through the narrow waist. It is a mesmerizing, uninterrupted flow. You can watch the tiny mountain of dust slowly building in the bottom glass, a perfect rising cone of spent moments. You can watch the smooth, flat surface of the dust in the top glass slowly, evenly sinking. There are no gears to creak. There is no water to freeze. There is no liquid to evaporate into the hot summer air. It is perfectly sealed, perfectly dry, and utterly relentless. It is an instrument of pure, unadulterated peace. As you lie there tonight, imagine the profound comfort of holding that heavy wooden frame. Imagine watching the sand fall, the worries of the world, the chaotic noises of the day. They are all trapped outside the thick, silent glass. Inside the glass, there is only the smooth, gentle, continuous flow of the fine dust. Let the imaginary sound of that falling sand fill your ears. Let it be a blanket of soft white noise, washing over your tired thoughts. Sift away your anxieties, just as the artisan sifted the dust. Let them fall away, leaving only the fine, quiet, and perfectly smooth rhythm of rest. The sand is falling. The room is warm. You are completely safe, drifting away with the gentle, dry whisper of the passing time. Let the warm, glowing heat of the artisan's workshop gently fade from your mind. The scent of warm wine and drying sand slowly dissipates, replaced by something entirely different, yet equally ancient and profound. Take a deep, slow breath in. Can you smell it? It is the sharp, clean, embracing scent of salt, wet canvas, and aged wood. Imagine stepping out of a dark, narrow doorway and finding yourself standing on the gently curving, heavy wooden deck of a great sailing ship. You are completely surrounded by the vast open ocean. It is the middle of the night, a deep, velvety, and endless night. Above you, the sky is a massive dome of glittering cold stars, entirely untouched by the glow of any land. Below you, the water is a dark rolling mirror, reflecting the starlight in broken, dancing shards. But it is the movement that you notice first. It is not the sudden chaotic jarring of the modern world. It is a slow, powerful, and deeply rhythmic breathing of the earth itself. The great ship rises, lifted effortlessly by a massive, unseen swell of dark water. It hangs for a brief, weightless moment at the crest, and then it slowly, smoothly descends into the trough. Up and down, side to side, a gentle, continuous, rocking embrace. It is the perfect, ultimate cradle, built on the grandest scale imaginable. Listen to the sounds of this isolated world. They are a symphony of isolation and peace. There is the low, structural groan of the heavy oak timbers flexing and settling as the ship rides the waves. Creak. A long, heavy pause. Creak. There is the soft, rhythmic snapping of the sails high above in the steady, pushing wind. And most constant of all, There is the endless, rushing whisper of the dark water parting at the bow and rushing along the sides of the hull. Swoosh, a soft sigh of foam. Swoosh. In this moving, swaying world, the ancient history of measuring time faced its greatest challenge. Try to imagine bringing our old friend, the delicate, open water clock, onto this rolling deck. If you placed an alabaster bowl filled with water on a table in the captain's cabin, it would be a disaster. As the ship leaned heavily to the port side, the water would violently slosh against the rim, spilling over the edge, completely destroying the precise measurement. As the ship pitched forward, the pressure over the tiny spout would wildly fluctuate. Time, in a liquid form, cannot be contained when the entire world is constantly tilting. The water clock demands absolute, solid, unmoving ground. It demands a stillness that the open ocean simply refuses to provide. For the early sailors navigating the vast, featureless voids of the sea, losing track of time was terrifying. Without knowing exactly how long they had been sailing in a certain direction at a certain speed, they could not calculate their position. They would be completely lost in the dark. They needed a timekeeper that was immune to the chaotic, rolling motion of the waves. They needed a device that could hold on to the steady rhythm of the hours, even when the world turned sideways. The mysterious invention of the hourglass provided the perfect, elegant salvation. Imagine walking slowly across the gently sloping deck. You descend a short flight of steep, narrow wooden stairs into the warm, dim belly of the ship. You enter a small, quiet cabin. A single oil lantern hangs from a brass hook on the low ceiling, swinging gently back and forth with the motion of the ship, casting long, lazy, moving shadows across the worn wooden walls. There, securely fastened to a heavy oak desk, sits a marine sand glass. It is not delicate or fragile like the elegant glass in the artisan's shop. This instrument is built for endurance. The two glass bulbs are thick and heavy, designed to withstand the shock of a rough sea. They are encased in a sturdy, unyielding frame of solid brass, tightly bound and cushioned so the glass will not shatter. Look closely at the sand falling inside the lower bulb. The ship is slowly, heavily rolling to the right. The floor beneath your feet tilts. The lantern above you swings. But the stream of sand inside the glass remains absolutely, perfectly straight. It is a mesmerizing thing to witness. The dry, prepared dust does not slosh. It does not cling to the sides of the glass when the vessel leans. Gravity, the silent, invisible anchor of the universe, simply pulls each individual, perfect grain straight down. The ship may dance and sway upon the chaotic surface of the water, but inside that thick sealed glass the flow of time remains absolute, vertical, and entirely undisturbed. Listen to the sound it makes in this quiet cabin. Beneath the creaking of the ship and the rushing of the waves outside, there is that familiar, dry, continuous whisper. Shh. Sss. It harmonizes perfectly with the sound of the sea. The water rushes outside, wet and heavy. The sand falls inside, dry and light. Together they create a deeply relaxing, stereophonic lullaby of motion and time. Now, imagine the person whose entire existence revolves around this simple, falling dust. He is a young sailor, perhaps just a boy, known as the ship's grommet. He sits cross-legged on the floor, wrapped in a heavy wool blanket to ward off the damp ocean chill. His only duty, his sacred responsibility for this long, 4-hour night watch, is to watch the sand. It is a job of profound, beautiful monotony. He cannot read. He cannot sleep. He must simply exist in the quiet present moment, his eyes locked onto the narrow waist of the glass. He watches the tiny, inverted mountain of sand growing in the bottom bulb. He watches the wide, flat plain of sand slowly sinking in the top bulb. As you lie on your bed, imagine sharing his quiet vigil. Let your breathing match the slow, heavy roll of the ship. Inhale as the ship rises on a wave. Exhale slowly as the ship sinks down. Let the gentle, swaying motion relax your spine and loosen your shoulders. The young sailor watches as the last few grains of sand approach the narrow funnel. It is a moment of quiet anticipation. The top glass is almost empty. Just a tiny depression remains. And then, the very last grain slips through the waste and joins the pile below. The top bulb is completely clear. Exactly 1/2 hour has passed in the dark. The boy does not rush. He moves with a slow, practiced grace. He reaches out a steady hand and grasps the heavy brass frame. He smoothly, deliberately turns the instrument completely upside down. He sets it back onto the desk with a soft, solid thud. The cycle begins again immediately. The new top bulb, now heavy with sand, begins its silent, dry whispering flow into the empty space below. Shh, shh. The rhythm is unbroken. Then, the boy performs the second part of his sacred duty. He stands up, stretching his tired legs, and walks over to the heavy bronze bell mounted near the cabin door. He takes the thick woven rope attached to the clapper. He pulls it. Ding. It is a single, clear, piercing note of pure metal. It rings out, cutting through the creaking of the wood and the rushing of the sea. It travels up through the decks, out into the cold night air, and drifts away across the endless dark water. That single chime is a message to the entire sleeping ship. It tells the captain in his quarters, the men resting in their hammocks, and the sailors standing watch on the cold deck above, that 30 minutes of their journey have safely passed. The night is progressing. The ship is moving forward. All is well. 30 minutes later, the boy will turn the glass again, and he will strike the bell twice. Ding ding. 30 minutes after that, he will turn the glass again and strike it 3 times. Ding ding ding. This beautiful musical progression of bells, dictated entirely by the silent falling of the sand, divides the long dark night into manageable, comforting pieces. The sailors do not need to look at the sky. They do not need to worry about the unseen passage of hours. They can simply close their eyes, surrender to the gentle rocking of the ship, and listen for the reassuring song of the bell. The hourglass on the open sea was not merely a tool for navigation. It was the psychological anchor of the crew. It provided structure in a completely unstructured environment. It proved that even in the middle of a vast, featureless ocean, surrounded by unpredictable winds and shifting waves, the orderly, steady march of time could still be captured and held safely in a glass. Let the image of that small, dim cabin fill your mind. You are safe from the wind. You are safe from the deep water. The ship is rocking you gently, side to side, up and down. The thick glass of the timepiece protects you from the chaos. Focus only on the straight, unbroken thread of falling sand. Let it mesmerize you. Let it draw your thoughts down, down, down into the heavy, gathering pile of sleep. The bell will not ring for a very long time. There is nothing to listen for but the soft, dry hiss of the sand and the slow, rhythmic breathing of the ancient sea. Let the slow, heavy rocking of the great wooden ship gently fade from your mind. The endless, rushing sound of the dark waves against the hull dissolves into the quiet distance. The solitary ring of the brass bell grows fainter and fainter until it is completely swallowed by the soft surrounding air. We are leaving the chaotic motion of the open ocean behind us now. We are returning to the absolute stillness of solid land, but we are entering a space far more profound and intimate than any temple or civic square. Imagine yourself stepping into a small, sparsely furnished room. It is a space designed entirely for deep thought and quiet reflection. The thick stone walls are bare, holding only the heavy, comforting silence. The light is incredibly soft, provided perhaps by a single, steady flame resting on a sturdy oak table. There are no grand mechanisms here, no towering water wheels, no complex gears, and no roaring furnaces. The history of measuring time has reached its most elemental, purely philosophical form. Resting quietly in the center of the wooden table is a beautifully crafted hourglass. Take a moment to simply observe it in your mind's eye. It is an object of exquisite, mesmerizing symmetry. The two glass bulbs, perfectly identical, sit one above the other, connected by the incredibly narrow waist. It is a physical manifestation of a profound truth. The top bulb is the future, full, waiting, heavy with potential, yet entirely unspent. The bottom bulb is the past, a growing, settled mound of memories, experiences, and moments that can never be reclaimed. And that tiny, narrow neck, where the grains of sand are actively squeezing through, that single, fleeting point of friction and motion, that is the present moment. Listen closely to the sound it makes in this profoundly quiet room. Sss. It is the softest, most consistent whisper. It does not tick like a mechanical clock, chopping time into harsh, jagged, and unforgiving pieces. A mechanical tick demands your attention. It creates an anxious urgency. It says, "Hurry, hurry, hurry." But the gentle, continuous flow of the sandglass is entirely different. It does not demand anything of you. It simply exists. It flows with a smooth, relentless grace. It says, "Breathe, relax." The flow is inevitable. As you lie resting tonight, let the image of this perfect, silent instrument fill your thoughts. The hourglass is perhaps the most powerful symbol of our own mortality ever created. In art, it is often seen resting next to a skull, a stark reminder known as memento mori. Remember that you must die. But do not let this thought bring you anxiety or fear. In the quiet, ancient world, this was not a terrifying realization. It was meant to be deeply liberating. It was a profound call to peace. Look at the falling sand. You cannot speed it up by shaking the glass. You cannot slow it down by tilting it. You cannot stop it. The gravity of time is absolute. And there is a beautiful, immense comfort in surrendering to something that is entirely beyond your control. Imagine that each grain of sand falling through the narrow waist represents a single worry, a single task, or a single stress from your waking life. Watch them as they slide down the smooth glass wall. They gather at the bottom of the funnel. For a brief second, they are suspended in the present, and then, inevitably, they slip through. They fall into the dark, silent chamber below. They are gone. They have become the past. They are no longer your burden to carry. The hourglass teaches us the ultimate lesson in letting go. When you watch the sand flow, you are visually witnessing the release of pressure. The top glass is slowly emptying itself. It is unburdening its weight. The anxiety of what is to come is steadily, quietly diminishing with every falling grain. Think about the physical reality of the sand itself. We learned earlier about the meticulous, patient process of purifying and sifting the marble dust or the crushed eggshells. Those tiny grains are hard, dry, and entirely lifeless. They do not feel. They do not worry. They merely obey the law of gravity. But when you place them inside the sealed glass universe, they become something incredibly beautiful. They become a smooth, fluid entity. They move like water, yet they remain perfectly dry. They are the perfect metaphor for a mind at peace. Your thoughts, when left to themselves, can be chaotic, jagged, and rough, like raw, unrefined sand from a beach. But through the slow, gentle, and deliberate practice of resting, of breathing, of simply being present in the moment, you sift your thoughts, you purify them. You allow them to flow smoothly, one by one, through the narrow present and settle softly into the quiet past. In the ancient monasteries, monks would keep a small sand glass in their cells. They would not use it to strictly time their chores or their prayers. They would use it as an object of meditation. They would sit in the absolute quiet of the night, their eyes fixed on the continuous, dry flow. They would allow the rhythmic, hissing sound of the falling dust to wash over them, drowning out the loud, insistent voices of the ego and the endless demands of the outside world. The hourglass is a closed system. It requires no fuel. It requires no winding. It requires no external energy. It only requires gravity, the most fundamental silent force in the universe. It is completely self-contained, completely at peace with its own nature. As you prepare to finally drift into sleep tonight, I want you to imagine that your own mind is a beautiful, heavy, and ornate sandglass. Throughout the day, the top bulb has been full, heavy with the weight of your thoughts, your responsibilities, and your anxieties. But now, in the dark, quiet sanctuary of your room, you have placed the glass down on a solid, unmoving table. You do not need to do anything. You do not need to force sleep. You only need to let go. Imagine the tiny, invisible valve in your mind opening. Feel the first gentle release. Hear the soft, dry hiss. Sss. Watch as the heavy grains of thought begin to funnel slowly, smoothly downwards, and they are falling away from the active, anxious part of your mind. They are slipping through the narrow present moment and settling deep into the quiet, dark, and restful chamber of sleep below. Do not try to catch them. Do not try to hold them back. Let them fall. The top glass is becoming lighter. The pressure is easing. The frantic energy of the day is slowly, beautifully, and inevitably draining away. The pile of rest at the bottom of your mind is growing deeper, softer, and more profound. Let the sound of the falling sand fill your entire awareness. It is a continuous, unbroken thread of peace. It is the sound of time passing. Yes, but passing without consequence, without demand, and without judgment. It is simply the universe carrying you gently forward, grain by perfect grain, toward the deep, restorative darkness of sleep. The room is quiet, the flow is steady, you are entirely safe, and you are entirely free to let go. We have traveled a vast and profound distance together tonight. We began our journey standing in the raw, terrifying emptiness of the ancient moonless dark, looking up at the slow, silent rotation of the cold, distant stars. We felt the quiet desperation of our ancestors, their deep, psychological yearning to capture the unseen, relentless flow of eternity and bring it down to the earth. And we have watched, in the tranquil theater of our minds, as they slowly, beautifully mastered the art of ancient timekeeping. We have wandered through the torchlit, incense-heavy sanctuaries of Egyptian temples, listening to the hollow, deeply comforting rhythm of water dripping slowly from pale alabaster bowls. We have stood in the sun-baked, marble-lined courts of Athens, watching the impartial, liquid justice of the clepsydra quietly stealing the moments away with its gentle splashing. We have marveled at the agonizingly deliberate, heavy creak of massive, wet wooden gears in the misty courtyards of the East. We have felt the bitter, paralyzing sting of the winter frost freezing the river of time into solid, silent ice. And we have found profound, dry refuge in the warm, glowing workshops of the medieval artisans, watching them patiently sift the dust of the earth to create the mesmerizing, continuous whisper of the hourglass. Now, all of those journeys, all of those immense, ancient efforts to contain and measure the universe, are gently drawing to a close. The history of measuring time was fundamentally a quest for peace in the dark. It was a search for a steady, reliable companion when the sun abandoned the sky. And tonight, those ancient companions are here with you, in the quiet sanctuary of your own room. They have done their gentle work. They have kept the watch. Now it is time for them, and for you, to finally completely rest. Imagine that you are entirely surrounded by the softest, most comforting darkness. In this peaceful, heavy void, the two great elements of ancient time, the water and the sand, are slowly merging into a single, beautiful symphony of sleep. This is the ultimate sleep story for adults. A tale where the ending is not a dramatic climax, but a gentle, infinite surrender to the stillness. Listen closely in your mind. In the distance, you can still hear the faint, echoing memory of the temple water clock. The alabaster bowl is almost entirely empty now. The long, yet heavy night is nearly over. The water gathers at the tiny aperture for one of the very last times. It swells, it becomes heavy, and it falls. Plop. A long, deep, stretching silence follows. The silence is heavier now, thicker, like a warm, protective woven blanket wrapping tightly around your tired shoulders. Your breathing slows down naturally, effortlessly matching the massive, drawn-out spaces between the drops. Another drop gathers. It holds on for a long moment, suspended in the cool, dark air, and then it simply lets go. Plop. The water in the basin below barely ripples. The surface is becoming a perfect, dark mirror again. The need to count the drops is vanishing. The numbers, the hours, the minutes, they are all dissolving into the dark water, losing their sharp edges, becoming entirely meaningless. There is only the slow, rhythmic pulse of the earth. It is exactly like your own heartbeat. Slow, steady, deeply relaxed. Remember the giant wooden wheel in the misty courtyards of the east. It has made its final, slow turn for the night. The heavy wooden bucket has emptied its water with a soft splash. The massive gears have settled into a deep, groaning rest. There is no more creaking. Remember the terracotta jar in the quiet Athenian court. The attendant has stepped forward in the dark. He has gently, firmly placed his thumb over the bronze spout. The miniature waterfall has been permanently suspended. The court is completely empty. The arguments are over. The air is absolutely still. Now, gently shift your awareness back to the dry, continuous whisper of the hourglass. The ship on the ocean has stopped its heavy rocking. The world is perfectly still. The solid brass frame rests securely on the wooden table beside you. The top glass is almost entirely clear. Only a tiny, fragile depression of sand remains. Sss. The sound is growing incredibly soft. It is a dying whisper. It is the sound of the very last worries, the very last chaotic thoughts of your waking day slipping smoothly through the narrow funnel of the present moment and falling entirely away into the past. You are watching the ultimate unburdening. The sand does not fight gravity. It surrenders. It flows willingly, peacefully into the dark chamber below. Imagine your own breath as that falling sand. As you inhale slowly, deeply, you are gathering the last lingering tensions in your body. And as you exhale, long and slow, you are releasing them. You are letting them slip perfectly through the glass. And the breath leaves your body and the physical tension falls away, settling into a soft, harmless pile far beneath you. The two ancient rhythms, the liquid heartbeat and the dry breath, are carrying you down. They are not measuring the time you have left to sleep. They are measuring the depth of your relaxation. With every imaginary drop of water, your muscles become heavier. Your arms sink deeper into the mattress. Your legs become completely relaxed, heavy as the carved oak of the clock towers. With every falling grain of sand, your mind becomes clearer, emptier, and more serene. The loud, demanding noise of the modern world cannot reach you here. You are insulated by thousands of years of human patience. You do not need to check the time. You do not need to know how many hours remain before the dawn. The ancient Egyptian priests are keeping the quiet watch for you. The young sailor on the dark ocean is guarding the glass. The universe is turning on its own. The stars are moving, and the river of time is flowing entirely without your effort. You do not need to push the river. You only need to float upon its calm, dark surface. We are approaching the very end of the cycle. Look at the alabaster bowl in your mind one last time. The final drop of water is forming. It is perfect, clear, and cool. It reflects the faint, dying light of the stars. It hangs there, holding the very essence of the night. And then, with a profound, beautiful finality, it falls. Plop. It strikes the calm surface below. The tiny ripples expand, grow wider, and then gently, entirely fade away into absolute perfect stillness. The water clock is empty. Its gentle rhythmic work is done. The liquid flow has ceased. Look at the hourglass. The top bulb contains only a dozen grains of dry dust. They are sliding down the smooth glass wall, following each other into the void. 10, 9, 8. The whisper is so faint you feel it vibrating in the air rather than hear it. 7, 6, 5. The past is full. The future is completely empty. 4, 3, 2, 1. The very last grain of sand slips silently through the narrow waist. It lands perfectly on the soft peak of the mountain below. The top glass is flawlessly, spotlessly clear. There is no more sand to fall. The dry whisper stops completely. The silence that follows is not empty. It is magnificently full. It is the absolute heavy, peaceful silence of a world that has finally stopped trying to measure itself. And time no longer exists in this room. There is only rest. There is only the deep, comforting, endless void. As you drift away into this perfect stillness tonight, if you have found comfort in this relaxing history documentary and these ancient, quiet rhythms, please leave a gentle like on this video and subscribe for more peaceful journeys into the past. Tomorrow, when the sun returns and the world begins its loud, frantic ticking once again, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me how deeply you slept, and let us build a quiet community of rest together. But for now, there is nothing left to do. The last drop has fallen. The last grain has settled. The ancient clocks are entirely silent. Let the heavy, beautiful darkness completely fold over you. Let go of the shore. Drift out into the quiet, timeless ocean of sleep. Good night. Sleep well.